Coming up on show 919, Ford confirmed the Mustang Mach-E production will start next month. Stick around, I'll tell you more. Plus, we say happy 10th birthday to Tesla's Fremont factory. The original one, where so much of it all started. Why their Model Y could be made sooner in Berlin than we realise, and why Porsche plug-in hybrids are going further. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. My name is Martin Lee. My job for you is to go through all the EV news every day and whittle it down to a little old podcast that keeps you up to date and keeps you in touch and saving you time, most importantly. Tesla's full self-driving raised today from $8,000 to $10,000, a $2,000 increase, which is double the previous increases. Giving you a week's notice last week was Elon Musk on Twitter, saying that if you would like to upgrade your existing car, or for people making a new purchase, do it now before today to save yourself some money. So that price is now reflected, the newly updated $10,000 price on Tesla's website, and that is obviously, psychologically it's five figures. I get that it's $2,000, but there is a kind of a perception of 10K being a much bigger number, and there's the reality, of course, that it is actually a now quarter of the price of a new Model 3, which then makes you think maybe a little bit harder about whether you really need it, but maybe you do. Certainly some bigger decisions to be made around that optional software, especially if Tesla will let you subscribe to it for when you want to make long trips. And obviously it's fantastic technology and everyone has a different opinion on that, but 10,000 does seem like such a large amount of money for what it will do. And again, that value is everyone's own opinion. Now, I don't think that driver assistance systems, I wouldn't value them at whatever car maker at such a huge amount of money. But, as the system gets better and all that, although Elon Musk has said he feels that it's worth $100,000 when it's finished. Let's start the news. EV conversions are being made easier for muscle cars. If you've heard of the EV conversion shop EV West, they've just unveiled their crate motor to convert old V8 muscle cars into cutting-edge EV technology, where you can simply take out the engine and drop in the motor. The motor comes from a Tesla, and the drive units and the surrounding technology does as well. It fits into the same space as well. Actually, it's smaller than where many old V8s will come out and used to be. You can even keep all of the back end of the car. It connects to your drive shaft, the existing rear end. It just attaches on, so it's not a cheap option, by the way. It comes in at around $30,000, and you'll probably want a battery as well, so make that $50,000. And you'll need to buy the donor vehicle, and of course, you'll need the labour to get it done. This isn't a way to get an EV on the cheap. It's a way to keep a classic muscle car on the road and to do it easily and to have an off-the-shelf product, but it's definitely not for those who are counting the pennies. This week, we say happy 10th birthday to Tesla making electric cars in their Fremont factory, the old NUMMI facility. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, if you like, 10 years this week, which is Tesla's home, their headquarters of making their production headquarters at least. Not 10 years since they've made vehicles, but 10 years since their official opening. And I didn't realize that Tesla, looking back at the story about how they ended up with that facility, they were going to have an assembly plant in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and a separate facility in San Jose, California, on a greenfield site. But that was too expensive, and now we know neither of those things happened. They went into partnership with Toyota back in the day. How different 2020 could have looked if Toyota had chosen to pursue a closer working partnership. Maybe they could have acquired Tesla and folded the talent, and even Elon Musk put him on the board of Toyota, or somehow worked out a way to keep him in the company. But obviously the world is a different place in 2020, and Toyota are still trying to hawk their very old hybrid technology that was pretty good 20 years ago, but they've relabeled it and rebadged it a few times over the years and are still trying to tell people that it's good stuff. But I think most people with half a brain see through that now. So while they're desperately trying to catch up with plug-in cars, Tesla, of course, are now leading the way. Toyota and Tesla formed a partnership 10 years ago to work on things like development of new electric cars together, production systems, engineering. Yeah, what could have been, that, of course, is where Tesla ended up with Toyota's unwanted former factory, the old NUMMI facility. Cost them $42 million and was way, way bigger than they possibly needed at the time. And looking back on it, Elon Musk said at the opening ceremony that one of his passions is engineering. And they took possession of the site earlier than 10 years ago, but this was the opening ceremony. Interesting that quote from Elon Musk. I watched the video online today where he talks about how excited he is about engineering. That could have been made, this week, really. He's still saying the same things. Very consistent. He does love the machine that makes the machine. And it's really interesting how actually 10 years ago the facility was ramping up, and it took them about a year to start making cars. The alpha versions of the Model S, about 20 of those, about 50 of the beta version, and then customer cars started 2012. Elon Musk tweeted in March this year, I think it was, to congratulate the team on their 1 millionth car. Wow. Let's move on. And the Model Y could be made in Berlin sooner than we realise. A difficult story to report on for you because, from the horse's mouth, from Elon Musk himself, the official line on the earnings call last week was that sometime in 2021 production will start, but don't get excited because volume production will be 2022. Now, we haven't worked out what Elon Musk means by volume production. He didn't elaborate on that, and nobody pushed him on that to suggest what exact numbers in his head he classifies as volume production. Could be 1,000 a week, or it could be 5,000 a week. But we do know there will be customer cars coming out of Giga Berlin in 2021. And I've been telling people, if you think around summer, June, July, August, you'll probably be ballpark there. Now we have a report, and again I say caution, it's a single report from a single customer in the Netherlands, but he had a status update on his Model Y reservation from the Tesla team in the Netherlands to say that after an internal update on the progress of Giga Berlin, he should prepare for an earlier delivery date than they'd previously advised, and sometime end of quarter one or quarter two. So that would be before June. Very interesting. Of course, many people didn't expect the Model Y to be coming out of the Fremont factory in California at the beginning of this year, actually. But they did exceed the timelines promised. So on one hand, we have one customer telling us a story via something that they wrote on the internet. Yeah, because that can always be believed. On the other hand, we have the CEO saying, don't expect volume production until 2022. But, halfway between those two things is probably, I'd stick to summer next year, is my guess, my prediction. They've got to start making cars at some point, and they've got to start selling customer cars at some point, even if they're not in the biggest numbers. Also worth remembering, the Model Y will have a completely new production process. The new 4680 form factor cells coming out of Tesla's pilot line in California. Of course, they're making their own cells for the first time rather than buying them in. These cells will be made in the US and shipped to Berlin for the very first Model Ys that are being made, their latest and greatest technology. And on the earnings call earlier this year, we heard something along the lines of Elon Musk saying that the Model Y is a fundamental architecture shift. It was something like that on the Q2 earnings call. And so yeah, a new front end, new rear end, new battery, cell-to-pack technology, structural battery. Goodness, there's loads in there. So very, very interesting what they will do with the Model Y. Let's talk about marginal gains with Tesla. And a kind of half-related story, actually. Getting 1% better every day isn't sexy or headline-grabbing, but marginal gains are the process of making a small incremental improvement in a process or a system, which adds up over time. And I believe Tesla's strength is marginal gains, and it's evidenced wherever you look in the company. And the efficiency, the EPA ratings are one thing that I would point people towards to say, look how there is a relentless march forward. Not always grabbing the headlines, But, of course, that Model S got to 402 miles by gradual improvements. And I do have listeners who tell me that I shouldn't talk about range as much, but I should look at the EPA's fuel economy and their MPGE ratings. Isn't that 1 gallon of gasoline equals 33 and a bit kilowatt hours? Well, look, forgive me, it's a fudge of a number. It doesn't mean anything. I do respect those people that contact me and say, look, talk about MPGE more. It doesn't appeal to me to talk about. I don't mind talking about efficiency. Either that is a miles per kilowatt hour or equivalent measuring of efficiency in electric vehicles. And the 2021 model years for Tesla's cars, not that they do model years, but we'll call them model years because they are significant changes. The Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive is still king of the hill. It's really impressive when you look at the Model 3 over the years. In 2017, it came out with 310 miles, just shy of 500 kilometres. The 2020 model got a bump to 330, and now the latest Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive does 353 miles, that is 568 kilometres. That's 43 miles of range extra, 69 kilometres of range extra in just a couple of years. And sure, there have been some big things like the heat pump going in from the Model Y, which manages the heating and cooling system more efficiently. But there's many other things like the choice of tyres, the new aero wheel design, all adding up to an approach of a relentless drive to go further with less. And one of the big questions remaining about Tesla's European-built Model Ys is the 4680 cells. These are the bigger cells, and they're the ones they're making themselves. They are cylindrical, just like the ones they've been using in all of their cars thus far, but more like well, people are calling them biscuit tin batteries. They're definitely not. They're much, much smaller. Somebody text me to say more like a jar of pesto. So we'll call them the pesto-sized cells. And, of course, weight and wind resistance, the enemies of electric vehicles. So the new cells are more efficient, more energy dense, more powerful, and cheaper for Tesla to make when they get to scale. Dream scenario, the virtuous circle, if you like, is being able to use fewer cells because, there will be fewer cells because physically they're much bigger. So for a start, less wiring, less of that infrastructure around them because the actual cells are physically bigger. But in terms of weight, they can have a lighter car. So they can have a lighter car by using less mass of cells in total in order to achieve the same range. Of course, they're improving the production around it as well over the US and the Chinese-made versions. So if you have the space in the car for the long-range all-wheel drive version, what should Tesla do? Do you think they should make the European Model Y go further so it'll be class-leading, untouchable, but really it would already, even if they kept the existing range of 350 plus miles, they would still easily beat all of their competition. I know that's the maximum range of the Mustang Mach-E top range, but if they achieve 350 miles with the long-range Model Y, why would they put more mileage into that and gazump the Model S? So it would also overshadow the US and Chinese versions, and in some people's minds they wouldn't be as attractive. But you can use fewer cells, which means a lighter car, which means it'll go further because it's lighter, and weight is the enemy of EVs, which means you can use fewer cells, which means a lighter car, which means you can go... Well, you see where I'm going with this. And they could also choose to reduce the price if they wanted to, if they're using fewer cells, because it's a cheaper car to make. Or they could keep the price high. European customers are probably good for it at the moment and effectively make more money, higher margins. For now, though, we are enjoying the Chinese-made Model 3s. They're currently on a ship bobbing up and down somewhere on the ocean. 7,000 of them on a car carrier heading Europe's way right now. Let me know your thoughts on some of those decisions they should take and make when the cars are finally made here. Moving on, Tesla's full self-driving beta release has a new cruise control feature, one of the improvements of the completely rewritten full self-driving beta, which only a few people have still. It was pushed out to kind of influencers and popular Twitter people so that they'd get everyone talking about it. and increased over time. One of the new features is that you can set your car to go over the speed limit when it's driving itself. So it recognises speed limit signs for the most part in most countries, and now you can set it to go over the speed limit either by a percentage or by a fixed amount. So some countries do allow 10% before the police pull you over. Some allow 10% plus 3. Some are zero tolerance. And so it's up to you if you choose to willfully go faster. Sometimes people have their GPS on their phone and they will go the GPS speed limit, which is often, if it's 70 miles an hour, it could be 73 on the dashboard, but a real 70 because, just it's not configured correctly on the car. So you can either do a fixed setting. So if it's a 30 mile an hour speed limit and you do a fixed 5 mile an hour over, you would do 35, or you can do a percentage. So you can say 10% over. So that 30 mile an hour example, you'd be doing 33 miles an hour. But of course that changes as you get faster if you go for the percentage option. And of course, I'm not possibly suggesting that you should drive faster than the speed limits, which I've personally never done. Let's talk about the headline story. Mustang Mach-E production is starting next month. Emails are now being received by Ford Mustang Mach-E future owners, saying the earliest delivery dates will be December the 7th, which must mean a November production if they're not already made and waiting to go to customers. So if you ordered yourself a Mustang Mach-E first edition and are looking forward to getting it, last time we heard it was going to be the week before Christmas, so week beginning December 21st, but now that gets earlier by a couple of weeks. Ford have recently reduced the price of the Mach-E by a couple of $1,000s in some cases, and increased the specs. And of course, in the US, if you qualify for the federal tax credit, £7,500 off your taxes next year if you qualify. And in some states, of course, you even get cash on the hood, which makes the car even cheaper. Interesting how time flies. Only this time last year that the Mustang Mach-E was unveiled, and they've only been touring it since February. And then, of course, the virus reared its ugly head and all that had to stop, and the development of the car continued with Ford's engineers working remotely and from home, and then having to upload data to cloud sharing platforms and all the stuff they would have done with 2, 3, 4 test engineers in a car, taking it out and discussing the prototype versions and then tweaking the software and taking it out again. All had to be done individually at the height of lockdown, where people were driving it around their local area if they were allowed to, and then uploading those files and then rewriting the software. It's been a massive task for all car makers developing new products, but the Mustang Mach-E really was at a crucial stage when the lockdown happened, and Ford continued at a pace to keep that schedule on track, and well done to them. All right, moving on. London stinks. I mean that in the nicest possible way. I love London as a city. I used to live there, and I worked there for many years. We lived about 6 miles outside of central London, which is still in the Barnes is still London. And I used to run or bike. I used to either run into Soho or cycle into Soho. And one of the worst things about living in London was running or cycling to work was the commercial vehicles. It wasn't the cars. In fairness, a lot of the cars are hybrids. A lot of the private hire taxis were running Priuses, and actually it wasn't that. It was always buses. As much as they'll tell you that they cleaned them up, they didn't. It was terrible. And commercial vehicles. And I don't know how they can have so much black smoke coming out of the back of them and not get pulled over or not be regulated. And again, the authorities will say, we're really cleaning up. That they weren't. And I only left a couple of years ago. It's disgusting. One of the things that I hated the most about it, I would literally taste diesel when I got to work, and I would stink, And so I'm really pleased that they are introducing a scrappage scheme in London now to help small businesses and charities. Heavy-duty commercial vehicles can now be replaced with a £15,000 grant to get your old vehicle off the road and replaced with a new one or a retrofitted one with... I'm going to have trouble saying this phrase. Clean diesel. Well done to the Mayor of London for having a scrappage scheme, but why on earth are these incentives not being held back for zero emissions vehicles? Massive fail. The last thing we want is a new working vehicle that could do 10 or 15 years of its life putting new diesel vehicles on the road, even though they go, oh, it's new clean diesel, brilliant, wonderful, well, stick your mouth over the exhaust pipe and see how long you last breathing in that clean diesel. No takers? Oh, I'm surprised. Moving on, a Nissan Leaf is getting cheaper in the UK. The Nissan Leaf is made here in Sunderland, in the north of England, and a new production line is starting on the 16th of November. The 62 kilowatt-hour entry-level model is now introduced, and the top-of-the-range model got cheaper. So the top-of-the-range Techno model is £34,710, and if you want the cheap specification, it's £32,695. Again, very, very big battery for 33 grand, just less than that, 32.5 grand for a 62 kilowatt hour battery. If you're not going to be rapid gating, in other words, doing multiple rapid charges in one journey, if you are just going to do like one rapid charge on a long journey, or even just use it around town, then that's going to last you a long time. A great choice of car, and just not really, I don't know, I just don't see it being given lots of love. Like, I don't see Nissan going out of their way to shout and scream about how this Leaf is not only made here, but is a great choice of car for so many people. I think the attention is probably heading towards the Aria, which is Nissan's new all-EV, which will be out 2022. Porsche are next, and their plug-in models are going further. The plug-in hybrids have had a battery bump increase of 4 kilowatt hours to almost 18 kilowatt hours in the Porsche Cayenne. That's a 30% increase on the previous version, and the hybrid from the Cayenne hybrid can do 48 kilometers without ever turning on the engine, and go 135 kilometers an hour on pure electric power. Again, for many people, they'll do their commute, they'll run their chores and errands only on electric power, and I hope that these kind of cars, not only are they high performance because they're Porsches and they combine, the engine and the battery, does give you that extra boost, but I hope that people get a taste of electric and choose to go all electric next time. I'm so conflicted over plug-in hybrids, but let's not push at that door. Finally, Fastned are opening Belgium's high-powered chargers. I'm a really big fan of Fastned. In fact, I joined their Investor-Call a couple of weeks ago on a Monday, I think it was, to listen to their financial results and just to understand the company more. They're a Dutch charging network, and they have been putting in high-power chargers into Belgium. So they now operate in the Netherlands, Germany, UK, and Belgium. There are 4 chargers they put in, 350 kilowatt charge speeds, and they talk about adding batteries and storage at their charging locations as well, in order to facilitate a quick dump of power into vehicles and then recharge them from the grid, and not having to have such big grid connections, which are expensive. So that's good. They say all the right things. They're doing all the right things. And I just think the company looks cool and behaves in the right way as well. And so on that ending of a quick dump, well, that's your news for today. Thank you for listening. 918 previous shows are in the archive. Final one of the week tomorrow for Friday's edition. Thank you to our premium partners, Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Porsche of the Village in Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East, nationalcarcharging.com and allohacharge.com. Also Derek Riley from the EV Review Ireland YouTube channel, and Richard at rsimons, rsymons.co.uk. They are the electric vehicle specialist. Go and treat yourself. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and do remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.